everybody. Welcome to Monday Stream. We are doing a Women Are panel. I have enjoyed doing this series of panels so much. I want to thank Twitch for allowing everything to be done and helping us facilitate all of it, and sometimes featuring us on the front page. I don't know about today. Who cares? Passive aggressive. Anyway, I'm really excited for today's installment because I consider all the people on this panel friends. So it's going to be maybe a little more raucous, a little more, a little bit off the cuff. Hopefully not any profanity, but I don't care. It's fine. Women Are is a panel show that features creative professionals talking about their creative fields. As always, we're giving $750 a week to a charity of our choice that ties into the career that we're featuring. And today it's voiceover actors, you guys. So our charity this week is actorfund.org, actorsfund.org. It is an organization that offers a broad spectrum of programs, a calendar of workshops, and online resources to support the needs of everybody in entertainment and performing arts. That's on stage, on camera, or behind the scenes, theater, film, radio, music, dance, and circus. So, you know what? Actually, right now, circus people probably need quite a lot of help because they can't actually perform, and Broadway people. So this is a really great charity. If you want to support along with us, go ahead. I'm going to throw out some names as we get to our panelists. So here are some names that you might recognize. Rick and Morty, Mass Effect, Fire Emblem, Destiny 2, DuckTales, Saints Row, Agretsuko, Big Hero 6. Wow, I can go on so long, but we have the women who are here today blow my mind with their talent. They are some of the kindest, most wonderful people I know as well. But you guys are going to be surprised by all the amazing things they've done that you have heard them do. And so I'm going to introduce them one by one and ask them to kind of introduce them. Yeah, I'm going to throw it out to each of them one by one and ask them to introduce themselves a little bit so they may be familiar with, you might be familiar with their work. Jennifer Hale, can you start, please?
Yes. Hello, Jennifer Hale. I've done a few video games, a couple episodes of cartoons, a little bit of singing, and yeah, that's how you might know me from any of that. IMDb.com.
That is the most underplayed introduction. Yeah, just go to IMDb and spend the whole time scrolling her credits.
Everything's NDA, so I don't remember any of it.
So that's your way to get around NDAs, is that you just don't say anything at all?
Yep.
I got you. Next we have Erica Ishii. Erica, who I've known since she was a baby, I feel like, but now she is a full-grown professional voiceover actor, and I can't wait to hear a little bit about your journey. Can you please tell the audience a little bit about your voiceover career?
This is so wild to me, Felicia. This is so wild. Hi, I'm Erica Ishii. You may have heard me in Destiny 2 as Anna Bray or Dream Daddy as Amanda. I'm in Fortnite and Marvel Avengers, and oh my gosh, I have stuff coming out like imminently that
you cannot talk about, right? That's the frustrating thing about voiceover. You do it and then you're so forbidden from talking about it, you forget you actually did it.
But yeah, and then also, yeah, I met Felicia through internet things. Yep. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to know you, and you've encouraged me every step along the way.
Oh my God. You know what? I mean, I'm so proud of people who take the flag and just start running with their own talent. It's my joy in life. And that's why I do this panel, so we can just highlight how amazing people are, including Tara Platt, who I've known forever as well. Tara, can you tell the audience a little bit about you and your work?
Hi, everybody. So much like what Jennifer said, I too have done some video games and some animation and things like that, although I don't sing professionally. I sing in the shower. So I will not be gracing you with that today. But yeah, you mentioned a couple things like Agretsuko and Fire Emblem, and I am...
Sorry, I mispronounced Agretsuko. I'm sorry, but I really love that character. Anyway, so, and last but never been released is Kari Walgren. Kari, can you talk to the audience a little bit about what you do?
Hi, everybody. First of all, like, Jennifer Hale just really gave herself a terrible intro. So if anybody is just tuning in, we just need to say that she played FemShep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can we
the best voiceover in existence?
Like,
should have done one thing that Trish and I did for BlizzCon panels is that we made everybody introduce each other because nobody's gonna like introduce themselves and be
That's
like,
true.
I'm hyping myself up. We'd have to be like,
I know. Well,
Right.
that's why I threw out some of the names of things that you guys have done because I knew you'd be humble so that people will be like, wait, what? And they'll go and IMDb you because I'm not going to list all your credits because when I started doing that, it was just the massive list of, I mean, everything you guys have done. It's incredible.
That's because we're ancient.
That's right. We're very, very old.
Except for Erica, who's a
You know, you don't look a day over 25. Nobody
I
here
look
does.
incredible for 167, don't I?
it's weird how like voice actors don't need to look good, and yet,
and yet.
Yeah, we could talk about a little bit of that. So everyone Google IMDb everybody here because you will probably have played a dozen games that they've been in, watched a million cartoons they've been in, and just be dazzled by the breadth of their talent. Which
Can I share something about Kari? Because she didn't toot her horn, and I'm going to. I'm one of the first, I remember the first time I ever worked with Kari. I will never forget it because it was, of course, I forgot the name of the show, but I remember Kari. And I remember hearing the cast going, okay. And then Kari did her thing, and I was like, oh, yeah. And then I was somewhere, Nolan North came in, and Nolan doesn't, he's Nolan. He's in Nolan's zone, right? But he came in and he was on fire because he'd just seen Up, and he's like, this performance this woman did for this I've never heard anything like it. She was incredible for the executive in Up, I think it was, or something you did in, it was Up or something like that.
Bolt. Maybe it was
Bolt. It was Bolt.
Yeah.
It was Bolt. And he was just on fire about it. He was like, oh my God, she's incredible. And I was like,
that's so sweet. Oh my gosh.
Tarzan Spider-Man. Sorry. Tarzan Spider-Man. But actually, one thing that I love about Tara's performances is like not just the voiceover stuff, but whenever she does on-camera stuff, she's in a lot of like really cool shorts. There's a lot of theater, and I'm just like, I go gaga for those performances.
Thank you.
And
her writing.
Writing. Tara is an incredible entrepreneur.
Self life that everyone needs to see.
It's true. No, they've Tara and her husband Yuri have made a lot of web series that have been incredible. The Superhero Shelf was one of my favorites.
Shelf Life.
Yeah, Jen is in Shelf Life.
Shelf Life, yeah. So, we're going to talk about how multi-hyphenate all these women are. And they make their profession in doing something that I think is greatly undervalued in the amount of talent and training that it takes. I think a lot of people think if I can talk, I can do voiceover. That is not the case. Early in my career, I was fortunate to be offered some opportunities to do voiceover, having never done it, and then getting in a booth and realizing, I have nothing. I can't do a take here to sell my line. I can't make this joke work with a funny look. Like, you don't have it. You don't have anything but your voice, and it is an instrument as much as playing the flute or anything is. So, and one of the things I read was Tara's book, but we're going to get to that. Oh my God, this is going to be such a good panel. I'd always want to remind the audience, if you have questions for our panelists, just post them in chat. My wonderful mods will be picking them out, and my producer Britt will be calling them. Generally, everyone's so interesting that I don't get to it until 3 and we run out of time to get to all the questions. But hey, I might be a little more professional today or not. So I want to ask just one basic question to the God, you guys are so good. Did you guys intend on being a professional voiceover actor? Because I don't think it occurs to a kid that anyone actually voices cartoons when they're a kid. So how did you guys find yourself on this path? Kari, why don't you start?
Oh man, well, I'm maybe a little bit of a weirdo, but it was actually on my radar super early. Because when I was a little girl, I told my parents that I was going to be the voice of a Disney cartoon one day. And I would run around the house acting out the voices. And, fast forward, I was always recording myself on a tape recorder and trying to do different voices. And when Batman the Animated Series came out, I actually went to a bookstore and I looked up Andrea Romano's address in a book. And I wrote her a fan letter. I think I was like in the 8th grade. And I said, I want you to know that I love your casting and your voice direction so much on Batman the Animated Series. And it's my dream one day to move to Los Angeles and to do voices for cartoons. And I really hope that we get to work together. And so years and years later, I'm walking into my first episode of Ben 10. I get like a little bit emotional. I got cast as Charmcaster, and she's sitting there, and I'm literally trying not to cry because I remember writing her that letter. She never got it, but like,
Oh,
so it was one of those full circle
Yeah.
kind of moments.
that is an incredible story. So you were imitating voices. You were trying to, I mean, because I watched a bunch of your videos on warming up the voice because I was like, oh, and you like linked one and you were like, oh, I can do. I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. It's incredible. Your cute little voice warm up. So basically, you set out, and did you study acting to get there, or was it something that along the way you did other things?
Yeah, I grew up in a really tiny town in the middle of Kansas, so it's not like there was a lot of voiceover there. But I did a ton of singing and theater growing up and took a lot of drama classes. Went to college for theater, and then after that, I worked in Kansas City for a while, and started actually doing some radio commercials and stuff for McDonald's and different things there before I moved out to LA.
Amazing. So yeah, so that's probably the most traditional route you could possibly take as a voiceover actor, and you had to do all these other things to get there. That's amazing. Tara, what about you? Did you start out, you didn't come from the singing part, you say?
I did not. I mean, I knew I wanted to be an actor from the time I was about 9. And so I got my BFA, I went to Rutgers, I also studied at the London Academy of Theater, and I moved to New York and I started doing stage work. And then I got an agent in New York that wanted me to come out to Los Angeles for a pilot season in television. But at the time, like, voiceover was absolutely not on my radar because I grew up with no television. Like, I never watched cartoons. I didn't have any kind of a history of playing video games. Like, that just wasn't part of my experience. And because Yuri and I eloped on the way out from New York, we came out and we were married and we were like, we're actors. We need work because we have to eat. And so the two of us were just trying to figure out how to get work that first, year when we were in Los Angeles. And I don't know why I thought of it, but I was like, hey, isn't there like a job where people do cartoons? And Yuri's like, what do you mean? I mean, I grew up, because he, of course, grew up watching everything that was animated and watching all the Japanese anime and like all of that. And he's like, how was I not the one that thought of this? And so because neither of us had any experience with it, we actually took a class. Because I mean, we had acting chops. We knew we liked acting, but we just didn't understand voiceover. And so we wanted to get behind a microphone and we wanted to see what it was like. And then from there, we fell into the jobs that we have been working in for the last 15.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think a lot, you have to kind of move to LA with complete blind faith in yourself, and you don't know what because if you knew what the odds were, you would not come. Yeah. Like, it is a stupid idea. If you think about it, like the attrition rate, the actual success, the rejection, how hard it is, how expensive it is, like, you would not be here. And so the ones who are dumb or confident enough and dumb/confident enough to think, hey, I'm going to take this world by storm, you get here and then it kind of leads you in a different direction than you thought. But that's kind of the joy of it, sort of the rolling of the dice, like, where am I going to go? Jen, what did you I know that you're a singer. Was that kind of your path at first?
It was. I mean, my first part of the path was just survival. I was like the kid at this junior high I went to that everyone made fun of. And by the time I got to high school, it was not going well for me. And I auditioned for the fine arts school, and I literally memorized my monologue in the car the night before at like 1 a.m. And I got in by the skin of my teeth, literally, which is ironic because that's what the monologue was from. And and I barely got in, and it really was home for me. Like I was like, oh, people who are unusual like me, don't quite fit in like me. Yay. And then through that, I started singing in a band when I was like 15. I started singing in clubs illegally. And that was really my heart. But when our guitar player's mom was an actress, and she helped me to get to a job at a video studio that was next door to an audio studio. And they asked me to come over and do a couple commercials because of the fine arts training. I could, it was in Birmingham, Alabama. I could lose my Southern accent.
Oh my God, Birmingham. Yay.
Yeah, Birmingham. And so I did that, and I was blown away that they paid me $30 or $35. So I hit it like a business, because business has always been a thing of mine. My second dad used to call me the little capitalist piglet. And But yeah, but I would like, run the numbers to make the macrame hangers and figure out my profit margin, and then I would just give them away. That's my kind of capitalism.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Wow.
but then I built like a business. I built up Birmingham doing on camera, and I do these small market car commercials, and then and when I did it, you had to be able to get through a 60-second radio spot in 60 seconds without breaking. You had to go through the whole thing, and they were usually written to like 62. And then you had to sub out one car dealer's name for another, and they were different lengths, and just all the skills building that were invaluable. Then I went to Atlanta. I felt the ceiling too much in Birmingham, went to Atlanta, worked there. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to head to LA. And like you said, everything did not go according to plan. I got the on-camera work, which is what I went there for, but it wasn't enough, like Tara was saying, to pay the bills. So one day I was like, I should just make a voice reel, because I know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I went in and I was done. And then I got an agent, and then I got my first show. My first job was Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego as a series regular.
Wow.
And like Tara, I was never allowed to watch cartoons. I barely watched TV. And I was like, and I jumped into class, like, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? I know I'm going to get fired. I know I'm never going to work again. How do I do this? So, yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. So I think, when people are like, how do I become an actor? Or how do I, I'm like, stay local. Okay. Get mine as much as you can locally until you move on. And like, that seems to be an interesting theme with you guys, like Kansas, New York, even, because New York it has some big things, but it's very like, there's very few opportunities and they're very fancy, so it's actually a small world if you think about it. Erica, where did you start? And I've known you before you were doing voiceover.
Yeah.
Like, what got you into this?
When I was nobody. And it's funny.
Well, you're always somebody. Okay.
I'm always somebody. I was me. And now I am more so me. I feel like I kicked in the back door. I mean, like, honestly, I'm the weirdo. Like, I actually come from like a showbiz family. Both my parents were in the film industry here in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
They're from New York. My grandfather was an animator for Disney. He was like at one point the vice president of UPA. So it's like I grew up with cartoons and with like show business and like being on set. And when I was little, my mom was like, wow, she has a lot of extrovert energy. What if we put her in acting? She might like acting. And so they did. And I was just like, literally, I was booking half of what I auditioned for, like commercials, like Barbie commercials, like little like info, industrials. And so I loved acting. I loved being on set. I, took acting classes when I was little. And then I hit an awkward teenage phase and braces, glasses, like I was so awkward. And so I like went deeper into violin and I went to the UCLA. I ended up, I wanted to do what Colbert and Jon Stewart did, being sort of like political humorists. So
wow, that's great. That seems like that seems so difficult to me.
It was it was a wild time in politics, and like they just did so much, to sort of give a voice to the voiceless and to, just sort of crystallize everything for us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was like, oh, I'd be interested in that. But then after school, I was like, I would like to give acting a shot, because the whole time I was still doing Shakespeare at UCLA. I was, like doing local theater. I was still, and I wanted to like do any acting that I could. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm part of the generation that came into voiceover sort of knowing that it was a viable career and like wanting to specifically do voiceover.
Yeah.
What
was your first job?
Gosh, I can't even remember. I think it was some industrial that it's like a friend had gotten me into. And for voiceover, it's weird because like I played a lot of video games, and I decided I wanted to do specifically voiceover for video games.
Which is hard. That one's hard. It's such a tight little industry, and it's so Like, and then you sign on for years, you know, like my friend Ashley did Last of Us for a year. I don't know. You guys what's the longest, I'm sure, because you've all had huge leads in video games. What's the longest that you've ever recorded for a show, a video game?
12 years and counting.
Wait, what?
That Old Republic?
The Old Republic. I was like,
I have a funny story about that.
Okay.
You know, David Hayter, he's
Yeah.
the Solid Snake. He's a really successful screenwriter. He's a really busy guy.
Yeah.
And I was in there, and I love connecting people is like crack for me. And I was in there and I heard they were looking for a guy Jedi. And I was like, oh, really? Have you called Dave Hayter? Maybe he'll want to do it. And I thought it was like one session. And I was like, he could fit that into his schedule. You know, 12 years later, he's still.
What? He wasn't, I know David from cons and stuff. He primarily is a writer. Like he just does it on the side because of you.
Well, we met in 90. We met actually doing the old Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s. He was Captain America and I was Black Cat.
Oh,
And yeah. And then we just hit it up. He's one of my dearest.
He's lovely. Yeah.
Deepest friends. And he's really good. That's what people don't understand about Dave. He's really good at a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm noticing, a multi-hyphenate, you know, that this is, I think all of us, when we're in entertainment, we have all these different skills and we don't know what to do with them and we can't quite focus on one only. And this is kind of the best of all worlds, right? We get to do a little bit of everything, but then one of them takes over, like me and doing whatever online stuff and you guys with voiceover. What do you think was the best, a lot of you talk about taking class, Erica, Tara, what was the best thing that you added to your arsenal as a voiceover? What helped you get better the most? And do you feel the need to like add accents to your thing, to your arsenal? Like, are those really valuable to have those extra skills in getting jobs? Or is it okay just to kind of perfect your one voice? Like, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I'll jump in real quick. I'll just say that I don't think you need to do that in order to start and to give yourself a really good baseline of like working regularly. You don't need that. But it is always nice. I mean, whatever you have in your toolbox, you can pull from. So if you do have an accent that you didn't have before, that becomes a whole new avenue that you can play with. But you already have so much to play with your voice. You've got pitch, you've got volume, you've got all sorts of ways to manipulate and play with what you naturally have without even trying to adjust that or play with that. But just like an opera singer is always trying to keep their octaves open and have as much range as possible, you also want to bring range to the work that you do. But I think ultimately it really boils down to the work of the acting. Yeah. So you're going to try to bring humanity to all your characters. And even if they're in a very similar vocal range, you're trying to give them and imbue them the character work of that point of view for what's going on realistically for that character in whatever circumstance they're in. So even if you have a character that's in a very similar vocal range, you want them to be unique enough because of that, but you can add things like accents. And if you don't know an accent, there's plenty of places out there you can learn an accent.
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't have a very wide range, there's lots of vocal exercises and singing lessons that you can take to expand your range and play with that and try to have good vocal health. There's a lot you can do, but you absolutely don't have to be working regularly. Plenty of people have a very small niche of what they can bring to you. We're not all Kari and can do all the voices. You know what I mean? Like
it's true. Kari.
There are plenty of people that have just a specific thing that they can bring, but they can play within that with a lot of material. And so you can bring a lot to it, even if you're not a character actor with your voice, there's still a lot you can do.
I feel like, in the end that the acting takes precedence and then all the sort of technical skills and like different voices, if you can do that, are secondary. I will say though that as somebody who is of Asian descent and is Asian American, that maybe a quarter of the auditions that I get, I ask for like an accent, like a, Japanese or Chinese accent.
Oh, interesting.
Honestly, if you are a person of color, it does behoove you to know an accent or another language.
That's actually an interesting question I had for all of you, because I think that this is something that's interesting to me that's evolved in voiceover. We've seen a lot, like when I started doing voiceover, I took classes because I was like, oh, this is so much harder than anybody appreciates. And even every single class really improves the way your comfort level, but also who you are as an artist vocally. There is an interesting thing where maybe 3 years ago, you would get approached to do a character of a different race than you were. And I actually, in my experience, turned down. I was like, I can't audition for Jasmine because I'm not Middle Eastern. They were like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm like, it does matter. And so it's become a little bit more imperative for people to play. Do you think that's across the board like a rule now, or do you still think it's kind of flexible to play outside of your ethnicity? And is that a good or a bad thing in your estimation as an artist?
I think we're at a really interesting place because many of us have the ability to take on the sound of anyone or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this brings up a deeper conversation, which is the conversation of reparations and things like that, like the people who haven't had opportunities. And I believe it's my turn to step to the side until things truly are equitable. Equals a different conversation, but truly equitable. And then we can step into the stand that is really deep and important for me is, can we just please rip any labels of gender, ethnicity, or anything, unless someone's referring to their anatomy or their hometown? Like, can we just let it go and just put humans in this thing and cast whatever's in front of us? But I think we have some ground to make up. I think we have some healing to do. And if I can be active in that healing by stepping to the side on some things, I'm excited to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you notice in the last 10 years, and feel free to address that question as well, but do you feel in the last 10 years that things have improved a lot as far as representation, especially as the roles that you as women have got the opportunity to play? It seems like, there were a lot of dated, on camera and off, there are a lot of dated interpretations of, I'm sorry, Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. I cannot let my daughter watch Clubhouse Mickey because I'm like, Minnie Mouse needs to do something here. Do you feel like there's a concerted effort to kind of improve the kind of roles you guys are available to you guys? And is that exciting for you?
I think the growing trends are very exciting. Like I think that there are more and more stories that are getting to be told now that just weren't being told in the past. And I think, to what Jennifer said, this is another reason that representation is so important, because you can't write, I don't think, really awesome female characters if there aren't females in the room.
Yeah, writing.
Writing on those projects. I think one of the most exciting things that I've seen in the time that I've been doing voiceover is the growing number of female voice directors. So I do think that it's sometimes a slow process, but I'm seeing a lot more now where, related to gender, related to ethnicity, they're really striving to get a lot more representation in it. And I think that's making the stories more interesting and the characters more interesting.
And I will jump in and say that I've noticed that they've done a lot more with making sure that when an audition's going out, they specify if they want a particular group to audition for it, and do not audition for it if you do not actually qualify for being part of that. And so I will say that I feel like that's starting to really shift as well, because like you even mentioned earlier, 3 years ago, they were sending all sorts of stuff out and you're like, I'm not actually.
I don't.
I mean, like Jennifer said, I mean, like I've played male characters. They're like an actor can do all sorts of things. And so ultimately, hopefully someday we can get to a place where whatever is the most interesting choice for that role, for that voice, can go to whoever that is. And if you have an actor that's whatever they happen to really be, they can play something different across the board for gender or race or whatever that looks like. But right now I agree with what Jennifer is saying, is there's a chance for us all to sort of shift the story that has happened and make a new story as we move forward.
Yeah, Jen just absolutely hit the nail on the head. There is a much deeper conversation to be had for both on-camera acting and voiceover, because it's true. The idea is for voiceover, because it doesn't matter what you look like, anybody should be able to play anything. But so far, those opportunities have not been equal across the board. And so we need to get to a place where they completely are, and then absolutely can just be an absolute free for all. And I will say, like Tara was saying too, it's been good to see them asking for proper representation, because some people have not gotten a chance to tell their stories, and this is their opportunity to do so. And I'm also extremely grateful to my agency, A3. I've been with them for 2 years. And during those 2 years, in the first meeting I had with them, I said, I don't want to play Latina. I don't want to audition for Black or Indigenous or just like any things where these marginalized identities don't get as much of a chance as I do. And they have backed me up 100% on that, or roles will come my way and I'll be like, I'm sorry, I can't. And they're like, yes, this is the correct decision. So, kudos to them and to a lot of the casting directors and to actors now for really stepping up and being cognizant of that.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Like with BoJack and with all these things, it's kind of a big shift in the industry. Kari, I have a question. I have some questions for you guys specifically. Kari, you played a lot of superheroes, and I want to know, how has that been? And if anybody else playing superheroes, feel free to chime in. When you are, and even just working with big franchises like this, there's a lot of pressure on how they want their characters portrayed, and also fan expectations. Like, how do you guys deal with that? Have you experienced backlash with any of your performances? I think this is actually a question with, I'm looking at Tara specifically. She's like, oh, I have something to say about this. Sorry. How do you deal with the responsibility of that, and also deal with any negativity that comes along with an opportunity that is so exciting?
Well, I'll start the conversation, then I would love to, hear what some of the other ladies have to say. But, I was a huge fan of comic books growing up, and certain graphic novels. Like I was a big Wonder Woman fan, read a lot of X-Men comics. And so in particular, I remember when I booked the role of Emma Frost in Wolverine and the X-Men.
I got to work with you on that. It was so awesome.
I know. And I was terrified. I was terrified because I was such a fan of the character that it was important to me to do her justice. And so even now, like I'll go back and sometimes I'll see old episodes and I'll be like, man, I could have, now I could do it better. Just because that character was important to me. And I've played superheroes where someone else has played them in another version, and the fans can get very intensely divided one way or the other. And the thing is there can be other interpretations. Like there can be multiple interpretations. We've seen on-camera versions of Batman over and over. We've seen different versions. And I guess the thing that just bothers me sometimes is that there seems to be this attitude sometimes that in order to prove your allegiance to one person, you have to trash somebody else. And I hate that. I really, really hate that. If you prefer someone else's Starfire, if you prefer someone else's Wonder Woman or whatever, that's great. But a lot of us know each other and respect and like each other. And, I don't like it when fans trash somebody else that I know and like just because they prefer one version or another.
That's really hard. Yeah. It's not like, one woman plays Minnie Mouse, I guess, and she does every single Minnie Mouse thing. And so, but when you have a Marvel universe or a DC universe, they have a lot of different versions and ages. And so people can get a little bit, how do you deal with that kind of negativity if you've experienced it online or even in person?
I can speak to that a little bit.
Oh yeah, Jen.
Where's
your boot?
It's right here. What Kari's saying is so true. Like we've all been Black Cats. So many of us have been Black Cats. So many of us have been Mary Jane. So many of us have been Jean Grey. So many of us have. I just did like Pepper Potts for the VR thing, and like I just ignore it. And I'm gonna say not like, oh, I'm not looking. It's like, I'm so conscious that what I give my attention to, I'm actually feeding that with my energy. And I will not put it where it's poison. I will not reduce myself or my energy to that. Those people need to be important. They need to feel important. They need to be seen. They want to matter. And they don't know any other way to do it. And it's like dog training. I just ignore all behavior except the desired. Like, okay.
It's a really good way to think of life. Yeah. As a parent. Trying to get out of this light. Jesus. Okay, yeah.
It's really pretty though. It's atmospheric.
Thank
it's
you. You know what?
wow.
I'm in my own indie film over here.
You
I was
did.
like-
I feel like Tara had something though, because
I know. I want to hear.
saw her
yeah,
face.
Tara was like, "Oh, girl."
Yeah.
Oh no, I wasn't trying. I was responding because I was recognizing what you meant. But like, yeah, I mean, when you play Wonder Woman, I've also played Wonder Woman, and like I've had, I don't know, 19 people on the phone from DC approving every single line that you say.
Oh,
So
wow.
people of 19 people as you say, Wonder Woman, this is, Batman, this is Wonder Woman. And you're like, oh my God, I have 19 people to approve that. Like you have to go through it. It's a lot of pressure. You're not just getting to go in and perform the role however you might want to. Like there's just a lot of weight as you move through it.
Mhm.
But I was also thinking when you had said, if there's any like sort of backlash on the internet,
Mhm.
I did just play Yuri Watanabe in Marvel's Spider-Man. And I got a lot of backlash because people were like, you're not Asian, you can't play the role. But I actually am Asian, but nobody knows that because I don't necessarily look like I'm Asian from the outside, but I'm Russian Mongolian. And so,
wow. So you got a lot of yeah.
I got a lot of backlash. And I was
Mhm.
like, well, I may not be Japanese, but I am Asian. And so it's an interesting sort of
It's a really hard line. Yeah, exactly. Especially in voiceover when it is a voice. Yeah, it's something that I think we're all trying to grapple with and everyone's growing and figuring it out. And a lot of people are just a little aggressive.
This is a really good point. I'm First Nations. My great grandmother's Inuit, and but you look at me and I read as white. And I'm in a place right now where you don't have to prove your heritage. You say who you identify as and it's respected. And that is fantastic. Yeah. Because I look like this and I'm like, you know what? You're discriminating from the other side. You don't know what's in my heart. You don't know that I step out on the land of my ancestors who've been there for 4,000 years and I can feel them in my bones. You don't know that.
Yeah,
it's like that again is part of a larger conversation too about identifying and like splitting the hairs. Like I'm part Indian, but I have a lot more privilege because I'm like pale skinned East Asian looking, right? So it's like, can I probably wouldn't take an Indian role and everything. And so it's just like, what's the line there? And it's just, again, like we're all moving and learning. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about everybody in the industry is like, we'll get new information or new ways of thinking. And we'll be like, okay, I will integrate that into the decisions that I make, into my performances. And like, that's really the important part, I think, is willing to learn and progress. And I don't know, just in all my answers, it always comes back to like, just love everybody in this industry and how close we are. The idea of, like sometimes you have to replace somebody on a role or the person who's replacing you and you kind of like message that person. You're like, hey, like no hard feelings one way or the other. And like, how are you doing? And because we all are just friends. It's such a small industry that everybody kind of looks out for each other. And there's so many times that I have, or that I know other people have been like, well, I don't feel that I'm quite right for this. Have you talked to this other person, Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. Like really, I mean, that's a good functional thing, even on camera or off. Like you're not getting the job over somebody else if you aren't right for it. Right. I mean, and if you get it and you're not right for it, it's going to be the worst experience of your life. I have gotten hired on jobs where I was like, I'm not right for this. And they gave it to me. I was like, I guess. And you're just miserable because you're not embodying anything that you really want to, and you're not feeling like you're satisfying it. And then it's just a miserable idea, situation. So,
and the idea of like sort of fan backlash is like, sometimes they are very well-intentioned, as Cara was saying. It's like, they're like, oh, I love your performance. It's so much better than X's performance.
No, we don't need it.
They want to relate, but it's, one thing that's nice is that you know that you always have the industry and your peers in your corner, which is wild.
I have one question, just I want to talk about business because a lot of you, especially Jen, are very good at business, and the business of this business is very important because you're a self-employed person, right? So you kind of have to have your business together. And I wanted to talk about, especially gender. I've recently learned that on a couple of other projects, the male person made more than the female on the project. And, there's not a lot of transparency as far as like quotes. So people will have a quote and that's what they charge per session, depending on who you are, you'll have a higher quote or whatever. And so without like any transparency in what other people are making, you sometimes can uncover that you're not making as much as your male co-star. Have you ever encountered that? Do you have it in your closet? You're like, I got to get, because now if I do something, I'm like, well, here's my rate, or I have to be equal to the guy who's on the panel or whatever, right? And I never would have done that years ago, but now I do, because I know I found one instance where I was like, oh, that's not cool. So how do you guys, A, run your businesses as a self-employed person, and B, deal with those kind of business things other than having people to rep you? Jen, please start, because I know you've done financial podcasts and all this stuff.
Well, I mean, I think the great thing is that all of us here have a lot of business acumen, which is really important to being able to survive, because there are times when you're in fashion and times when you're out of fashion, and it really has nothing to do with you. And what's really critical is being able to save so you can get by when you're not in fashion and you're not taking it personally and you're not creatively withering inside. I sort of work like I'm two people. I am the adult who takes care of the bills and the showing up on time and all that stuff. And then I'm the playful kid who gets out there and is spastic and does whatever, all the creative stuff. And this one never has to worry about money. And this one handles the business. And what you brought up in terms of quotes, as voice actors, we get typically scale. And it's an amazing day when we work for overscale, but it's not norm. It's just not. I've been in this business for, good Lord, almost 4 decades, and I still fight for overscale, and I don't get it sometimes. And so it's my choice to walk away or not. I more operate on, do I love the people? I'll work for free if I love the people. Don't tell my agent. But in terms of the words that I use now, because I'm really aware that what the choices that I make impact everyone around me. And if I fold, I've just folded for everybody. And I've just folded for future generations. I've just folded for these women here. I'm not going to do that. And the words I use are favored nations. Even when we do like conventions, like I remember going to my agent and going, oh, whoa. Why are these guys getting more than me?
Very often.
I don't care what I'm getting. I just care that it's equitable, that it's comparable in terms of our body of work, because I've done more than that one and I've done more than that one. And no, you will not view women in this way, and I will not be the vehicle that allows you to do that. And so I don't care. I don't care if you like me or not. I really don't care. And in terms of the business stuff, Tara and Yuri have written books about this. Like,
I want to talk about their book for sure.
And there's learn how to do your taxes. Learn how to do the simplest, used to be the Schedule C. Just get the simplest thing you can. And there's categories in there that you can deduct. Those are your business expenses. Track those. Track your money. Money is like a friend. If you talked about your friends like you talk about money, would you have any money? Or would you have any friends? So that's why you don't have any money. So
write off all of your video game and console purchases, every comic book that you buy, like all the nerdy stuff, all your costumes. Like all those are tax deductions for me.
They are.
It's amazing. That's why I have this career. I just put what I wanted to be able to tax deduct, and I'm like, okay, I guess I do that.
Track stuff though. Grow ups have a couple grown up days a month where you sit down and you reconcile your bank account and you look ahead. And also, don't ever run yourself through fear. Run yourself through your imagination, through your desire and what you want. Like people, when I moved to LA, they're like, you can't do animation and commercials in this. And I was like, la, 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 and you do what you decide you can do. What you see is real. What you focus on grows. It's quantum physics. It's real. Tara knows this stuff.
No, Tara, I want to talk about your book, because it's the first thing I bought when I got a job. I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Well, let me read this book. And I remember DMing you. I'm like, what's your book called? Tell me about what inspired writing that book, and like what you've found, and what's your number one tip from your book that you would recommend to people in this?
My number one tip. Oh, wow. Well, it depends what you're looking for. If you're trying to work as an actor, I always say read aloud every day, because it's about getting your body used to getting words off the page. And it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to read anything aloud every day. So that's like a little tiny tip.
That's great.
As far as our book, it sort of came out of the fact that both my husband Yuri and I were working a lot in voiceover, and people that were fans of the work we had done started emailing us and sending us messages and asking, how do they do what we do? And what is it that we do? And how does it work? And not only was it fans, but then a lot of people that we knew in the business, other actors on camera and things like that were like, well, I want to be doing voiceover too. How do we start doing voiceover? And we would write these long emails, or people would take us out for coffee and ask us to have lunch and all this. And
Pick your brain. I'd like just want to pick your brain.
Yeah. It wasn't that we didn't like hanging out with people or that we didn't want to give them this information, but I was like, we've written so much in these emails to people answering questions that like, if we just stuck it all together, we could just give it to people and be much easier. And you're like, oh, and I was like, why don't we just write a book? And he's like, well, there's probably books out there. And I started doing research on the books that were out there. And a lot of them were very dated or very specific. Like there was one all about the cone of sound around the microphone. And I'm like, well, that's great. And it's good information, but there's different kinds of microphones. And it's also about the work of it.
Yeah.
Not only the business side, but the fun of it, the acting, like there's so many elements to voiceover. And that's why we did write our book. And we actually wrote the first edition 10 years ago. And so the second edition came out this year, or a year ago, which was the 10th anniversary edition.
Amazing. Yeah, no, you're right. Because when I wrote my memoir only because I was sick of doing podcasts and giving my story to other people for free for their own uses. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, it's so easy to give yourself away for free. And that's okay. Just be cogent of doing that because your time is valuable. Your attention is valuable, especially during COVID. I've like, Felicia, you have not written anything all summer, but you've done 8 zillion podcasts for other people. Stop it. Just put the brakes on, girl. By the way, thank you for all being on my panel.
This is a podcast. I thought we were just like hanging out.
Yeah, this is the best part.
You know what? It's funny too. I actually like to add something about the idea of social media in this industry now, because I know that a lot of people resent the fact that they have to have a presence online in order to be a successful actor these days. Because yes, like, oh, it should just be about the craft, but it's also about your connections with other people, and not in like a weird sort of selfish way, but in just like, these are your peers. You should be able to like interact with them and to know who they are. And yeah, like I have to think about everything that I tweet is going to be seen by all the video game companies that I work with,
Yeah.
And so there is, like, be honest and be truthful to who you are online. That is what always does best. That's what connects best, is being yourself, but also understand that, like, you post a spicy pic, like definitely Bungie is gonna see that. So
yeah, don't be trashing people's work and be like, oh, sorry.
God, and that's another thing too, is I was coming up in the same time, we're working in sort of hosting and online stuff as I was doing voiceover. And so it became sort of like this conflict of interest. And I never really did trash people's work, but it's like, ooh, I gotta be careful when I talk about here. I gotta be careful like saying like negative things about this company. And you just have to sort of reconcile who you are as a person and who you are as a fan with who you are as a professional.
Yeah.
There's something so powerful about, oh, go ahead, Kari.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's really huge.
Yeah. There's something so powerful about what you just said though, Erica, because I think we've officially entered the age when it's screamingly apparent that the vibe you put out, the words that come out of your mouth and the choices that you make impact the world. So I'm not sure we all get to just say whatever the heck we want anymore. I'm not sure if you do, you're gonna live in that soup. Every word that comes out of our mouths, and to the same end, weirdly enough, on the same coin, I remember, like, I walked away from songwriting for years because we are surrounded by the most insane levels of talent. And I would look around and I had the disease of comparisonitis going, oh my God, no, I'm just not, that doesn't cut it, for years. And I finally got with it this year and I was like, stop it. Be you. Be only you. And I was like, dang, that's it, isn't it? Just honor your vibe. It's not going to be everybody's vibe, but I'm going to put mine out there.
That really is a revelation. And it's very hard because like Erica said, we have this digital self that we put forward. We have to. I know that I get hired primarily because of my social following if I'm a voiceover. I know that. So I'm very aware. But I've always been hyper aware of what I present online because just a personality thing. I'm very protective of myself. So I've never put personal information on. I'm very, cogent of not alienating people until this year where I was just like, okay, at the election, I can't not say this. But at the same time, it is a business tool and it is very important to people who hire you in entertainment. So sometimes you can let that warp yourself so that you aren't honoring your inner artist because you're so concerned about the outer shell. And so it's this constant push and pull of, just like you're like, here's my adult, here's my child, here's my outside, here's my inside. Am I honoring my outside? Am I honoring my inside? And how do I meld those two? Kari, how do you feel about, the self-care that you need as an artist versus the commercial aspects of being, what you have to be in this industry?
Man, that one strikes really deeply for me because I am so private. And so the push towards this idea that, you have this accessibility to everyone on social media. And there's this idea of transparency. And this is, these are my kids, these are my pets, this is my house, this is like, even just saying that out loud stresses me out.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's been a thing for me where just even trying to do more conventions has been difficult, just because I one of the reasons that I love voiceover so much is that I get to be creative, but there's still a little bit of anonymity about it. And that's really changed since I've started this industry. And so for me personally, I find the social media to be kind of a delicate dance. So I find that I like to share updates on what's happening professionally and that sort of thing. But I have to really kind of like gird my loins to like, this is a picture of my cats. And that's a very personal thing for me to share. Or this is something that I'm in my PJs watching a movie that I like, and sharing that is difficult so yeah, I don't know. For me personally, I think that's been harder. But for the most part, I think you find your tribe, and you find the people through social media that are supportive of what you're willing to share. And and then of course you have the people that are close to your heart, and whether or not you're posting about it, you're just close to them.
No, it's very difficult, and you just kind of have to figure out what am I getting joy from sharing, right? Because we all get joy from sharing and enhancing, and if that's just sharing your cakes, at least that's something that you're outputting something that's not artificial.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if you guys have noticed this because you guys have a bigger following online than I do, but like this year was the first year where I was up for a big role, and they basically came to me and said, "I'm sorry, we can't give it to you because you don't have a big enough following."
Really?
Oh, God.
What?
Are you serious? Why would you say that out loud? Like, why would you admit that?
I mean, that's what they're doing now. They're looking at your follower count, and that's how they're deciding for the leads of video games now. So
I would like the camera to cut away so that I can vomit privately. Just like
and this is a great opening, I think, because there's a spectrum of decision makers in our industry. There are the corporate people who make those decisions like that. And that is part of the dehumanization of the workforce, the crushing of the middle class, that hopefully we're going to start to crush that instead. And then there are also, though, the sparks of hopes in the indies and the medium-sized games that really are about what it's about. And I think the more we feed that, the thing about these guys over here is they have all this marketing money, so they steal our attention. I'm like, no, I will not. I will ignore the undesired behavior. Go away. Not that I stick my head in the sand. I'm fully aware and informed, but there are other things coming up, and I'm putting all my energy into supporting not what Tara just said, because that is
no, it's really tough. But as somebody who is probably on the reverse of that, I'm on a bunch of lists probably just for my voice or just for my following. It's very much it very much cultivates, or at least before, like I've tried to put work into being better at it, but
don't dismiss yourself like that.
So it's just jump in here, but like you may have gotten on somebody's radar, or they may have thrown your name into a list because of your following, but you do the work.
No, I do appreciate that. No, I do. But I had a great sense of imposter syndrome because I'm like, who am I? I know why I'm here, and it's not because of my inherent talent. And you start feeling like you're very shallow. Also, nobody ever puts a ring on it. They're just bring me in to use me for 1 or 2 episodes, right? And then I go away, right? And so then it's like nobody's committing to me because they're using this false thing that they just want to use, and it's not about me. So that's something that I always grapple with. Like, do I want to be used anymore? Just because I've built up a following, it really is a problem because it doesn't make me feel satisfied as an artist, and it never makes me feel confident that I'm there because I'm talented. So, there's a reverse to it, but I think it's much worse to expect artists to cultivate this thing that takes so much time that I just happen to accumulate because I started really early, right? It's not like I consider myself a mommy influence or something like that, but it's just something that I built up. And at the same time, it's a weird requirement to have artists have to have in order to get a job. And that just breaks my heart, Tara.
Felicia, though, I feel like something that you said that from both sides of this to come back full circle is, first of all, what brings you joy.
Exactly.
So whether it's posting or just living it in your life, getting refocused on what brings you joy. And then second of all, from a creative standpoint, I think all of these things are just proof that there's a lot of stuff that you don't have control over. I mean, there's a lot of casting decisions or things that are just out of your hands. And if you knew the odds, going back to what you said early on, if you knew the odds going into it, you would not go for a creative lifestyle like this because it's so hard. But if you choose to do it, then finding opportunities to make the art and create the art and be creative in ways that fulfill you is super important.
The gift. Yeah. No, that's so important because I fired all my agents and reps last year, except for my voiceover and my book person, because I love them. But I fired everybody because I'm like, you could very easily feel exploited. And I'm sure you guys feel like you're just pigeonholing me. You're not really getting me the opportunities that I feel like I'm going to grow in. You don't really understand my vibe or what I love doing. You're doing the thing that you think I should do. And so it's very easy when you're using art as a commodity to be used because all you want to do is to get your art out there. But then eventually you feel very hollow because you're actually not expressing yourself in the way that got you into it in the first place. So it's this weird wheel of thing, and you just have to sometimes just get off.
Evolution.
I need off. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Guys, I of course need to get to your questions too late, but we do have some good ones. First one is from D Magic Befoto, and I'm gonna address this one to Erica because you specifically said you wanted to do video game voiceover, and I just open it up to everybody who's done both. But Erica, please dig in. What have you noticed that's different between cartoon and video game voiceover, other than the length of time, which we obviously were talking about?
Right. It's funny because it really depends on what it is, because like there's so much crossover between like the JRPGs and anime sort of voices that will book you work. And then there's a lot of sort of crossover between like something like Love, Death and Robots and like The Last of Us, so it's less as about the medium. I always say like video games are a medium, not a genre. And I think that a lot of times we make that mistake of being like, oh, video games, so it must be serious and like, not cartoony. But I will say that I have been told I have more of a video games voice because I am more like serious and, like more grounded in my performances. So there is sort of that feeling, but I would say it's just, you just have to know the genre of whatever it is you're auditioning for. And unfortunately in games, especially, you have no idea what you're auditioning for. So you just got to make a decision and guess and hope that really cartoony anime read is not for Grand Theft Auto. Like you just make a decision and you go with it. But yeah, I think it's just more about genre as opposed to medium.
Yeah, you don't really know what you're auditioning for a lot of the time nowadays, and you have to sign an NDA.
It really helps to like, because sometimes like, because I'm such an avid gamer, like I'll read signs for a thing and I'm like,
you'll know exactly what it's for.
Yeah. And so that has given me the edge in a lot of things, I think. But like, honestly, yeah, just make a strong choice and go with it.
Amazing. Tara, what do you notice? Because you just did Fire Emblem, I believe, right? And I want to play that now. Like I was just looking into that, and my friend Raiko played in it. What do you? Is there something other than being on fire, which any video game I've ever done, it's like, okay, now you're on fire, and it's like, bar none, that's the last thing we always do in record.
Right. Well, yeah, you're always you're usually, if you're gonna have some sort of video game that has some battle sequence or fighting sequence, there are going to be a series of efforts and deaths and sounds like that, whether you are an orc doing it or a dragon doing it or a human. Yes, you are going to have to do some of that, the effort sounds, which definitely take a certain amount of diaphragmatic support. And but depending on what you're doing as far as animation, you may also have a lot of that too. I mean, there are plenty of cartoons and Japanese anime where you have a lot of efforts and fight sounds. So it's not that you're necessarily going to be doing more of those just because it's a video game. Although traditionally, if you have, I don't know, one of the war, Call of Duty or something like that, you are going to have a lot of those sounds unless you're lucky enough to be a pilot. And so you're not making all the sounds because you're in the cockpit as opposed to like running and grunting. I mean, like it all just depends on what you get cast as.
Yeah. Jen, you have been in the booth for so many amazing, iconic video game roles. Like, what do you feel like it's you never get to actually act with the other person in video games as much, right? Is that a generalization or?
In my experience, it's about 5% of the time. I mean, I do,
wow,
a decent amount of animation as well. And like the significant differences are the time, the load. In animation, we get a 28 or 32 page script and we're sharing the load. We're taking turns and the session time is the same. And in a game, you're in there for the same 4 hours, only it's a 4-hour one person show. And depending on the load they have, you might get 2 5-minute pee breaks and you're back in. It's intense. And also you're working out of context all the time. You'll do a scene, a line from this point in the timeline back to this one, then this one, then this one. And you just have to drop into the moment, fill in all your blanks and go.
Yeah, you get an Excel sheet.
Yeah, and
and
the magic that is untapped, I think, in game production is having actors work together. Because I've gotten to do it a few times, and geez, it just bounces the whole thing through the sky. It's
with the mocap. I mean, knowing
now mocap's different. I love mocap. Mocap is one of my favorite things to do. But it's this funny blend of like you're doing theater with your body, but you're typically doing cinema with your voice, and you're totally like, you've got like a gray box going, this is the transmitter that everyone's fighting over, like
black box theater,
it's like that, you're like,
that sounds so difficult. It sounds like, I mean, I guess when you do a Marvel movie as an actor, all you do is act on a green screen. Like you really don't have anything to react to. So I guess it's the equivalent, but
that's a great example. Like we were doing Marvel, we were doing the Iron Man VR, right? And I'm hanging off a piece of scaffolding and like falling off the scaffolding because I was falling off the ladder off of an airplane. It's the same. That's where they kind of meet up, is right there.
Wow.
And none of it's neurosurgery, so we'll be.
I mean, it's pretty hard. Kari, have you done a lot of mocap? Is it like a very strange thing to be able to? It's because it's different kind of acting with body acting. I don't know how. I can't imagine. Honestly, I've never done it.
I think Jen nailed it. That there's a dollop of theatricality about the body work, but then especially with a lot of games going more cinematic these days, it's very like intimate and everything with you're having to like make the motions like a lot bigger so that it reads. It's tricky. I did discover on one game sometime back that I don't know how to jump. Like I jump funny. What? Doing motion capture and see, I'm a little awkward. Like I'm a little awkward and stuff like that. So apparently I jump and I kind of land like sort of.
That reminds me, I was doing Knack, I think it was, and TJ Storm played Knack himself, and he does a ton of mocap and stunt stuff, and I had to do the Iron Man, and I was like, the what? And so he showed me the Iron Man. So I had to do the whole job in 3-inch heels, and they didn't have the wedgies; it was the heels because they wanted the body language of the character. And this is the villain. So I'm like sprinting and running, and and he showed me the Iron Man, and I became so fascinated with the Iron Man. I did it all day. And then the next day, I couldn't walk on my left leg. I was like,
oh no,
what is this? This is
freaking
Yeah, it's,
love
I
them.
think that when you start peeling back all the things that you love and how they're actually made, people really don't know how they're made. And this
You
is
don't want to see inside the sausage.
no. And I think we're going to I want to do one last question before we go is what are the challenges when it comes to responding to other voice actors that aren't in the same room? So how do you as actors, because that's 90% of the job, as Jen says, how do you project yourself into a situation where you're organically responding to another line? How do you do that in your head when it's not really available when you're performing?
I mean, I would just say you try to pretend that you have said the line yourself so that you know what it is you're responding off of, because you would just be making a creative choice. And so you creatively choose how the line is said to you and you can respond to it. I mean, like that's basically you're using your imagination to fill in all the blanks. And if you're lucky enough to be the second person recording and they need it to match up, specifically, they'll often play you the line in, but usually you're just having to like make it up in your head of, I assume this is how they're saying the thing that they're asking me. And so I'm going to respond this way because that's what I think it's going to be.
Yeah, it's funny. And have you guys done any dubbing? Because that seems like I just want to make sure we leave everybody knowing it's not just talking to a microphone. It's dubbing over other people's foreign language. It's dubbing over your own words. It's also, motion capture and acting by yourself, but also acting with other people. It is just really so many different skill sets you have to have.
And adjustments. When you're in somewhere and you've got the idea of how the scene goes and somebody goes, Felicia, no, there's like Kari, the first job I ever did with you. I came in and I was the Emerald
Empress. It was,
yeah, and I came in and I did the whole scene like this. And I was like chewing the scenery and having a lot of fun. They go, yeah, she's 16. I was like, all right, let me do that again.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it again. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you make the most committed decisions that you can in the moment, but you have to be flexible. You've got to be flexible. I mean, I've booked jobs where I show up and the thing that got me the job, they've decided is not what they want. So if I have in my head, okay, I booked this job and here's a little MP3 of my audition, and
you go over it. You're like, okay, I know exactly what I did.
And I go in and they say, so we've decided she's Russian and we want her to be about 10 years, maybe 12 years older than what she did in the audition. Happens all the time. And so split second, every choice I've made creatively in my head, everything I've practiced, everything that got me that job is gone.
Wow.
So
and then you're like, why am I here? Thank you.
And you know what? But here's the answer to that, Felicia. And this is why I would say to you, this is why you're gonna keep working and keep doing your thing, is you're there because you're an actor and you're a creative person. And so you make those adjustments. You put yourself in that mind of play. You're prepared. You do the best cold reading skills and studying that you can before you get in that room so that you can take those adjustments and, like Tara was saying, react to that environment as whatever character you're thrown.
That's amazing.
That you just reminded me, Kari, that's one of the greatest differences between animation and games. And most of the time, we don't get game scripts ahead of time. It's all cold reading. You go in.
Animation scripts ahead of time? What the?
Yeah. You go in and you just have, and you'll have like take 2, sometimes take 1, sometimes take 4 goes to market. And you just read it. You just like actually just read it and then you just said it.
But you're also hauling ass. You guys don't realize with video games, you are just really like, you got to do and I just did a book reading, which is a completely different skill set. We were like, we got to do 75 pages today. I'm like, what?
I just did my first audiobook. Oh my God, that's a thing.
That is a different thing. That's a whole different skill set. Wow. It is nothing. Anyway, well, we could talk for hours, you guys. I didn't get to as many questions as I like. It's just what I do. I want to thank all of you. Could you each tell everyone where they could follow you and where can they support your work? If you have anything you'd like to promote, please do it. Jen, could you start, please?
Yes, I am at JHale Tweets on Twitter. I am at JHale Graham, Gram, not the cracker, on Instagram. And I have 2 songs out. I have 2 new songs out. One is called Never and one is called Sea of Stars. And you can just search both of those titles with Jennifer Hale. They're on all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, all of them.
Yes, beautiful. Please do that. Kari, where can everybody find you?
You can find me at Kari Wahlgren and check out the funky Swedish spelling there. So at Kari Wahlgren on Instagram or Twitter. And yeah, I've got a Facebook official page as well for those of you that still check out the old Facebook. And
Tell them about Slaughter. Tell them about Slaughter.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yes.
And I will be having an album coming out in 2021 called Slaughter.
What?
Which is a tribute album to the music of Slaughter, which is my favorite late 80s, early 90s hair band.
What?
And Erika Ishii is playing violin on it and kicks butt. So so check in on social media for details as far as when the album is going to come out.
That sounds incredible. Make sure to follow Carrie on that. Tara, where can everyone follow you and make sure that you get that next freaking job?
Right. I'm on Twitter and on Instagram as @TaraPlatt.
Tara Platt. And pick up her book, you guys. If you ever want to learn more about voiceover, it's an amazing resource.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Erika, where can people find you? And what do you have
Hi.
to talk? You have some secret stuff coming up, but
Okay. Well, let's see. What can I talk about? Tomorrow, Destiny 2 Beyond Light is out, and I can definitely say, yeah, you should play that. It's gonna be great. I'm probably gonna pick up my Warlock again and play a little bit. See you in the Citadel. I'm at Erika Ishii on Twitter and at the Erika Ishii on Instagram. Follow me. I post a lot. I am perpetually.
you're the most attractive looking, like you put the most effort and like here I am wearing the same pants after 2 weeks and you've done a photo shoot. So I'm like,
I know.
I just want to live through you. You can do that. God bless. You look so amazing.
I didn't have to put on pants for the photo shoot, so you know.
We're wearing shorts right now too. So anyway, thank you so much, you guys. Next week, we're meeting a bunch of storytellers, including Shirley Jane Anders, Fonda Lee, Ali Brosh, and a brand new person who I just added. And I don't want to mess up her name, so I won't say, but amazing authors next week. Thank you all for being here. I've learned a lot.
Felicia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, see you guys.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.